Are you still getting that?
I think it's gone away. Okay, we'll get started right now then. Welcome everyone. This is Luke Grand from Practical Farmers of Iowa. Welcome to the Farminar tonight. We have our every Tuesday night Farminars going on, and we're glad to have you here with us. And had a couple of things I wanted to mention, and then we'll go right to our speakers. We are a great organization, Practical Farmers of Iowa. We have a great farmer-led organization. So our members decide what our programs are. Here's an example of one of our programs last summer, one of our on-farm field days, where our farmers got together and talked about some new ideas on a beginning farm of Drew Leets up in northwest Iowa. These farminars are our way we like to try to get together in the wintertime without folks having to travel. And we're glad you can make it here and just try to imagine yourself shoulder to shoulder with other farmers for the next 90 minutes as we listen and learn about some great topics. Tonight's going to be about poultry. But as you can see, we've talked about other stuff too. Even next week, we're going to talk about something new, even as well. Talking about some equipment for beginning row crop farmer and livestock farmer. This is a great series we've had, and we hope to have another winter series again this coming up this winter to continue to join us every Tuesday night. We'd love to have you. And please fill out the evaluation form we send every week, and you can help guide our next topic. Next thing we're going to. And let's see here, the next slide here. We really want to be supportive and open as much as we can and support you and your efforts. So please feel free to become members of Practical Farmers of Iowa. Our members are very diverse of all kinds of enterprises, and they love to share what they know with each other and even come up with new strategies of marketing or production to improve their farms and lives. We have over 100 events a year that we feature farmers as leaders. And maybe you could be the next leader of one of our events. You never know. Join Practical Farmers of Iowa today. Just these low rates, $20 a year for students. With these with a membership, you get great discounts to our events, including our annual conference, which is coming up January 10th, 11th, and 12th, to be held in Ames, Iowa, at the Sheeman Conference Center. We'd love to have you there. We're probably going to have about 550 registrants to this conference. Keep up with us on Facebook. Just follow us on Facebook. Practical Farmers is our tagline there. And we have a fan page, and we always update that regularly to keep you informed on all the new events and opportunities for beginning farmers and experienced farmers of all enterprises. I want to acknowledge our sponsors. The Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program is a wonderful opportunity we got to apply for a few years ago. And they've been able to pay farmers for sharing their knowledge on these farminars and bring this to us today. And we have wonderful other partners, too, that help us out, and I'll make sure to show them again at the end in our discussion view. So tonight we're going to talk about poultry with Matt Russell and Patrick Standley from Coyote Run Farm. And then we're going to also include Karla Hanson from her farm in western Iowa. So first, I think we'll have introductions from Matt and Patrick, and then we'll have introductions from Karla, and then get to their learning outcomes that they've determined or they predetermined, and we'll have all of you join the conversation through the chat box with your own questions. So Patrick and Matt, you can turn on your mics and start telling us your introduction.
All right, you're able to hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, and this is Matt, and just to be clear, we're going to go ahead and run through our PowerPoint slideshow. Is that correct?
Give an introduction first.
Okay.
This is Patrick Standley. We've been farming for 7 years, 8 years. I was a zookeeper for 18 years, so here we go.
And then this is Matt, and I work off farm full-time. Pat works full-time on the farm, and we're delighted to be here tonight. So do you want us to go ahead and do the slides?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So this is we have a farm we bought in 2005, and it's 110 acres. We're basically turning this farm kind of from the 1930s into a modern farm that's all around retail agriculture, relational marketing, and we're using sustainable agriculture. We have about 1.5 acres of fruits and vegetables. We do pasture poultry. We've done turkeys in the past. Right now we just have laying hens. We have about a flock of 300 laying hens. in 2 groups, and we currently have one group ready to retire to the pot, and a new group of chicks that are 4 weeks old, or 4,
10 months,
about, they're 10 weeks old, and they'll start laying here in February or early March. And then we do grass-finished beef. We've converted the whole farm into a grass-based system, except for the small areas where we do crops, vegetables, and then we'll have a little bit of small grains on just a few acres for oats and particularly for straw. All of our marketing is direct to consumers. We've been at the Downtown Farmers Market in Des Moines for 6 years. Actually, this was our 7th year. And currently we've started this season, this fall, a delivery to Plymouth Church in Des Moines. In the past, we did that in the off-season with out at a parking lot with pre-orders, and now we're going to be doing that more formally on a year-round basis at the church on Wednesday nights. We have some people that come to our farm. We have a farm crawl the first Sunday in October, and then a limited number of people throughout the year will stop into the farm. We've started to sell a little bit more to restaurants. That's mostly, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, it's only vegetables, some meat, but we never sell eggs to anyone other than directly to consumers, so no wholesale on eggs at all. And one of the tricks to our success is being able to combine my trips to Des Moines for work with deliveries. So when we're delivering, say, 30 or 40 dozen eggs, if I'm already going to Des Moines, then that trip's already paid for, and that's helped us a lot. So the Poultry Roll at Coyote Run Farm, Pat, why don't you talk a little bit about the role of poultry in our operation?
Well, it's like a staple. It brings everybody, everybody loves our eggs. Our eggs are different. They're out, the hens are on grass and pasture. And it brings people to our booth. We have a lot of good, dedicated customers that buy our eggs every week. And then they also buy everything else that we have.
So the other products that are really important are the heirloom vegetables. We do plant starts, and then we have beef. That pile of things is recycled egg cartons. So we have a lot of people that return their egg cartons. They really like the sustainable aspect of our farm. Sometimes we wonder if it's worth the hassle that some people return them dirty, but it's actually a really good relationship builder. And when we say people do, people feel good about it. When we say people do crazy things, they'll make a special trip just to get eggs in the middle of the week. They get nervous if they've forgotten, and they'll see if I can bring a dozen eggs, and they'll come by my office to pick them up. People are very dedicated to our eggs, and that's been really helpful in the whole farm for us. We started the first year on the farm. We got our chickens from another egg producer when they changed their flock. We went and got their old hens and then kept them on the farm just loose. We built this little building, and then we didn't have much gardening going on, so
we had 50 the first year.
Yeah, 50, and they were not quite spent, but going in that direction. The next year we got more of them. I think we did that for 3 years and built up our flock.
Last time we got 250 from her.
Oh, and the last time we got 250. But they were on their way. They weren't super productive, and that's when we decided to start doing chicks.
And they were 18 months old when we would get them, approximately.
So we had this permanent building that we could do a couple hundred hens in. That's kind of the max. The 250 was pretty full, and it's permanent. It doesn't move. So we would rotate the chickens and pastures around the garden and move the chickens kind of in a fan, different places around this building. When we bought chicks and started them, we needed another building, so we built this building out of recycled materials, and we drag it with the tractor so it's on skids so we can move it around. And then last fall we had a guy that's interning with us, a good carpenter. We had a running gear for a hay rack, and he designed and built Chicken Mobile on it. So that building is on on wheels, and we can pull it around with the truck much easier, and sometimes just push it to a new spot of 10, 15, 20 feet away, and then that's really helped our ability to really rotate the chickens through better pastures, better for the birds, better for the pasture, and we're currently building a second one of these as well. So that's kind of how we grew. We grew from 50, and now we've got a flock of at least 300 that we try to keep. But then that also means when we're doing the chicks that come in the mail, about 150 at a time. Right now we have almost 450 chickens on our farm. So the lessons we learned was we started with really low capital investment. So we started at a very small scale. We didn't have to buy the chickens. We built buildings with recycled materials. We didn't do a lot with fencing, so the chickens had more big areas, and we just used the fence that was existing and kind of patched it up with welded wire and stuff, so they didn't crawl through the existing fence. Then we started
5 acres.
Yeah, about 5 acres. So that worked pretty well. We had a little bit of predation with that big of area, and now we keep adding chickens. So we've invested in our production as we grew our market. So the first year when we just had 50 hens and we started at the farmer's market, we'd sell 8 or 10 or a dozen eggs a week, maybe 30. Right, this past summer we sold anywhere between 90 and 110 dozen. Last year we had a little bit heavier chickens because we replaced the flock a little closer, so we were selling like 140 dozen.
We sell everything we can produce, we can sell.
Yeah, we've been sold out of eggs all year round for the last 3 years. We keep improving our equipment and systems for efficiency. So like the buildings, we keep getting that better. There'll be a slide here where we show you our fencing that we use. We now move the fence around. It's very easy to move. That was an investment, but that's helped us be more profitable. And the other thing is we really focus on our strengths. We've had to decide whether to do turkeys or other meat birds, but we've basically in the last 3 or 4 years decided that the eggs are the most profitable, and so we've really focused on those and let the heritage breed turkeys go by the wayside. We're still thinking about whether we want to do those in some way, but only if it doesn't take away from the egg laying.
Because the pasture is important, having clean pasture.
Yeah. So we went through and thought about all the things that we need to have in place to have chickens, and this is at any scale. So if you're going to have 4 or 5 hens, you're going to need to think about all these things, or if you're going to have 500 hens. And I don't know if you want to go ahead. So we talked about the housing. You're going to have to put the chickens inside someplace, particularly at night. We're in Iowa. It gets very cold. Except for when they're chicks, we don't supply any heat. But we do have to have them inside for predator, and then also for shade in the summer sometimes, and for getting them out of the elements in the wintertime. But particularly for night so that they can roost. You're going to have to feed them something. We feed a commercial laying mix, and it complements our pastures really well. And we've decided that it does not make sense for us to try to grow our own feed, because the volume of feed, while it does get significant at $12,000 a year, to have the equipment to grow our own feed and then to have to grind it and mix it, that just becomes prohibitive. So it's more cost effective for us to just purchase our feed. Yeah, we buy it in bulk. The roosts, they like to roost at night, so having something that they can sit on. Nest boxes, you got to have something that they can lay in. A lot of these things you can just build yourself very small and then scale up as you need to, and we'll show you some of those pictures as we scale up. The fencing and the bedding, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's the inside of that chicken building. You can see the steel nest boxes that run, about $300 to $400 a piece? Or was that right? Or maybe
a little under 200.
A little under 200. So, Those have been really good. We use wood shavings for bedding. You're going to have to feed oyster shell or grit, or both.
Calcium.
For calcium. Feeders and waterers, you've got to have those things, and they're going to be a cost. You have to have a water source. Close by. So we don't heat the water in the wintertime, so for us, we bucket hot water throughout the day in black plastic pans that stay pretty much open even in the worst of weather. But that is an expense. That's a time element. But it's worked for us rather than heated pans or heating the inside of the building. So our chickens are out all year round. If it's really bad, they may stay inside, but
they have the option.
They have the option to be out. And when it's snowy, we actually put down hay because they don't mind the cold so much, but they hate the snow. So if you put some hay down, they'll come outside and dig in the hay and eat some of the hay and get them out of their building. You saw the cartons. There's going to have to be some kind of way you put the eggs in. You have to. Go ahead.
So say we buy our cartons. I think there were like 3,000 or 4,000 we purchased last time, and that way they're only 19 cents a piece. But I was really shocked at the price of the cartons when you go to buy new egg cartons. People are charging 30, 40, 50 cents for one carton.
Yep.
It cuts into your profit.
So being
somewhere to store, 4,000 or 5,000 egg cartons.
Yeah. And as far as the license, this is going to be state by state, but in Iowa you have to have an egg handling license if you're selling to retail, wholesale. We don't. We only sell directly to consumers, and we're exempt from needing an egg handling license. So we're able to wash the eggs, and you'll see a picture of this, just in our kitchen. If we needed the egg handling license, if we wanted to do wholesale marketing, then we would have to have a designated place to wash the eggs. We'd need to candle them. We need to add some expense that we've decided, since we're sold out every week, going direct to retail, that we're not interested in adding that additional expense. There's a picture of our fence and our pastures. This is we get it from Farminar fencing company in Washington, Iowa, and they have pretty good products, pretty reasonably priced. This fence is about
$170 for 160 some feet.
Yeah, so just about $1 a foot, but it's very easy to put up, very easy to take down. So we're able to move the chickens across pasture more efficiently that way.
When you move the building, we just pick up the fence and move it, so they always have access to new areas. And it is electrified, so it'll keep predators away.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just checking to see if anybody's asking questions, but I don't think so. And then manure, you're going to have to do something with the waste. And if you're doing laying hens, there's also the waste or the disposal of the spent hens, and we'll talk about how we deal with that in just a second. But this is a picture of the eggs on the counter. So we wash them every day, box them up, put them in the refrigerator. We just have regular refrigerators, not highly efficient, but they were extremely inexpensive to purchase. So that's worked out pretty well. And those refrigerators are used for produce too as well. If we had an egg handling license, then those refrigerators have to be designated only for eggs. So without the license, it gives us a little more flexibility. Somebody asked, what do we use to wash the eggs? We just use a non-antibacterial soap, just a light soap.
Little dish soap.
Yeah.
And usually the eggs are pretty clean if you keep your nest boxes clean. So you just, if they need to be dipped in the soapy water, they do. Otherwise, they just kind of get rinsed off and put aside.
And that's also real important. So if you have your system in place, like you're investing in some wood chips to keep the building dry, then you're closing the nest boxes at night, a couple of extra steps that way, maybe a little bit more investment, but you're saving it on the back end because then you can wash the eggs a lot faster and you don't have any waste, where if you have an egg that's really stained and really messy, we're never going to sell that one. So we have very few of those. So that being efficient on one end helps you can invest in things that have a return. That's the goal. Somebody's asking how do we store the eggs when we're waiting to sell them? We put them in refrigerators. So we get them chilled. We always chill them with usually the same day they're laid. Sometimes we will sell eggs that haven't been chilled as long as they're going to be chilled within 36 hours. I think that's the industry standard. So we always make sure that if I'm taking eggs to Des Moines and they're the day before they were laid, I'll take them and make sure people know they've got to get them in the fridge that night, but they'd be a day and a half from being laid.
Although some people do keep eggs, and they do not. In the olden days, they did not ever refrigerate eggs. And I do know people that sell eggs to people that do not wash them or refrigerate them. I mean, personally, I would not do that, but people do.
Yeah. Somebody's asking about the mix of our pasture. Our chickens, we found they really like there isn't really a poultry mix that we've found. We've worked with some of our suppliers to put together a mix of Alsatice clover, which they really like, and they really like grasses. So trying to get that nice mix. They will eat red clover, but only really when it's immature. Once it starts to mature, they just kind of work around it. So, but if you're combining the chickens with other animals, I know when we had them with the horses, and then we had to take the horses out of there because the horses would run and clobber the chickens. So that didn't work out so well. But the chickens love digging through the manure, and they really help spread it out. So sheep and chickens and cows and chickens, I think, are a pretty good mix.
Mm-hmm.
So when dealing with waste or manure, some of the, what do you do with 150 laying hens when they're no longer laying efficiently? So what we do is we've done this 4 times?
4 or 5.
4 or 5 times. We have a party, and people come and help us butcher the chickens. Everybody that comes gets to take chickens home with them, and we found that works really well. Again, as far as the budget, one year we did butcher the chickens at a certified facility, but it was only 9 miles away. We sold the chickens for $5. We kind of basically made a little bit of money, but
$2.50 a piece, pretty much.
Yeah, we just didn't make a lot of money. And then when that facility closed, in order to drive and spend a whole day butchering, we just didn't see a way that would make us money. So we started inviting people to come help us, and it doesn't cost us much. We usually have a big meal, and it takes some time, but it's great public relations with our customers, and it's a pretty efficient way at low cost to do something with the hens so that they continue to be a source of food and nourishment and not just composted.
Now this particular picture was during a blizzard. I think we had about 18 people at our house that day. So a lot of people came from Des Moines and Pella and all over in a blizzard, or it was after a blizzard, and it was very cold, and they still showed up, and we assumed we'd just kill as many as we could and that'd be it, but they showed up and got the job done. They loved it. It's our customer base. They love it.
And the other thing about that is that we always invite, I think a previous slide we said we have about 125 families that are our regular customers. We actually send out emails to about 300 emails, which 300 households that have signed up to receive our emails. So we don't get nearly everybody coming for the chicken butchering, but everybody gets the invite. And so there are a lot of people who never come to the farm, but they get really jazzed that their farm has a chicken butchering party, and they'll tell people about it, and they'll bring it up when we're at the farmers market. So it's really been a very successful strategy for us, not just in dealing with the issue of what do we do with our spent hens, but it's turned into a really great marketing piece for our farm in terms of that relation building and helping people.
And they get to take the chickens for free.
Yeah, well, if butchering chickens for 4 hours is free.
A lot of people say, how much do we owe? It's like, hey, you worked.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody asked about sheep. We don't actually keep sheep with our chickens or goats. So if that's an issue, somebody said there might be an issue.
We had goats.
You might want to check. We had goats with them and never had any problems. But Not a lot of goats. We just had a couple of rescue goats. Okay. So here's the price of our eggs, and this developed over time. We're still kind of trying to figure out. We don't have all of our costs amortized out over all of our depreciated, over all the different aspects of the farm. But we do know what our feed costs are, what the bedding, what the oyster shell, and we think that we're running about 60% of the price of the eggs goes back to those things. So we really only have about 40% that can go into the buildings, the cost of our mortgage, electricity, water, and our time. So it is a profitable enterprise for us, but it's not as profitable as one might think if you just look at the prices. So we started in year 1 through year 3 at $3 a dozen, 2 for $5. In year 4 we got rid of the discount, and then years 5 and 6 we went to $3.50 or 3 for $10. At the beginning of this year we got rid of the discount, and by the end of the season in September we went to $3.75. Our feed costs from March to August went up 25%. And so we felt like, actually I think it was 20%, but so we recouped some of that, and we're probably going to go to $4, if not at the beginning of the year, certainly at the beginning of the farmers market season. Okay.
There are already people selling them for $4 at the market, so we wouldn't be like the first ones to do it.
Yeah. So we pay. I don't remember. It was like 40 cents a pound for feed when we did our calculation, and we bought. When in July, when we saw the price of feed, we got 4 pallets, and we had a facility, a building to store them in. So we just, we bought 4 full pallets. We generally buy a pallet a month.
4 tons of food.
Yeah, 4 tons, and we generally go through about a pallet every month. Maybe a few days extra, a few days short of that, but and so right now I think it's about 40% or 40 cents. But do you remember what it was? We changed up our feed just in the last
it was 38 cents a pound.
Week, and so we're going with a little higher protein, and it actually was down to 38 cents a pound instead of 40. We do not use an organic feed. We're using a conventional feed. There's no medication in the feed, so we're not feeding antibiotics, but it is conventional feed. So there's going to be GMO corn and soy in the feed, and we're very transparent about that. I mean, if people ask us, we don't hedge. We're very transparent about everything we do on the farm. Okay. So the costs of doing business around the eggs, kind of what's the labor, what's the investment. We focus on eggs because they're more profitable than meat birds, and buildings were the limiting factor. So when we thought, do we scale up the laying hens or do we do turkeys again? Hands down, it was easy to decide we need to scale up our laying operation, because that was a much better profit than the meat birds.
And the meat birds actually are they're much harder work, a lot more work. As far as you sometimes have to get them off. They're on top of the building instead of going in the building, because they're heritage birds and they're not pinioned, so they can fly, and they don't ever leave. They always stay around, but you might have to chase them down off the building and then walk them into the building. That's every single night, all through summer until you butcher them, and that's quite a bit of work.
Yeah. And just answering a couple questions, that the $3.75 is per dozen. Not 2 dozen. There was a time when we did a discount, like 3 dozen for $10 or 2 dozen for $5, but right now they're just straight up $3.75, and we'll probably transition at some point, unless feed goes down, but I don't see it doing that. We'll go to $4 a dozen. And go ahead.
And at $4 a dozen, we will have no problem selling every egg we can produce.
Yeah, and that is a bit of a challenge for us as we're thinking about our costs and profit for the farm. We also are really sensitive to, we're feeding families, and we want to, we don't just want to, it's hard for us to just keep raising the price, and we know we need to do that, and certainly when the feed became so expensive this year, we had to raise the price. You know, from a strictly economic standpoint or a business standpoint, there is an argument that you should just raise your price until your sales slow down. We just find that really hard to do. So we've been trying to put our price at a point where we feel like we're getting something for it, and there's still a lot of value there for the customers. For our breed of chickens, we've basically used red.
Right now we have one flock of Rhode Island Reds, and we have Gold Star.
And Red Star.
The Red Stars are the
Okay.
Rhode Island Red. And we'll probably stick to Gold Star. They're, I think, much nicer laying bird, and just nicer bird, period, in my opinion.
Something with the meat birds that we realized that we did about 60 turkeys, and you had the whole day of driving to the processing plant, which was over a 300-mile round trip, and then you had the time where people are picking up the birds, and we did 60, and we really probably needed to do like 120 or 150 to cover, because those costs are all the same whether we're doing 60 or 150, but we didn't have the facility for 150, and so you do have to think about scaling up for efficiencies, but then do you have the ability to scale up? And so for us, it was to get out of meat birds and to focus on the laying hens. And then also just investing for better efficiency and technology. You know, we used to use welded wire. You put it up once. We could do the electric fencing. That really was a much better technology. Having better buildings, having better other equipment and things. You invest in that, but if you're doing it right, you're investing, and then you're getting a better return. We haven't tried chicken tractors, primarily because our flocks are 150.
Plus, for predator-proof, they would really need something that you can shut them up in every night.
Yeah.
We have coyotes, raccoons, a lot of skunk and fox, owls.
Yeah. Okay. And
the tracks, yeah.
So we'll turn it over to Karla to have her talk about her farm, and then I think Karla and us will go back and forth and answer any of your questions.
All right, Karla, I made you a presenter now. You can turn on your mic, and I'll pull up your slides, and you can tell your story.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
I hope. All right, great. I'm Karla Hanson. My husband is Todd, and we became farmers almost by accident. We have 6 children and always wanted to move to the country and had planned on building somewhere when this beautiful location came up, and we decided we were going to buy the house and 7 acres. And then, much to my surprise, my husband said, well, why don't we add 20 acres of pasture with all the farm buildings? So we squeezed our belts and did all the paperwork and said, yeah, we can afford to do this. And then we decided, well, if we don't want a hog lot in our backyard, maybe we should squeeze that belt a little bit tighter and pick up the CRP crop ground, which is about 45 acres. So we did that. And then the person who bought the original pasture that came with the farm decided he no longer wanted to do that 2 years after we lived here, and we ended up buying that as well. So we ended up with about 110 acres. And not a whole lot of knowledge on farms. Luckily, the crop ground was in CRP, so that's pretty easy. You just continue with that. And then we rented out the pasture to a sheep farmer for a couple of years. And I thought, this is crazy. We're getting a little bit of rent, and I know I can raise sheep. I know I can raise chickens. So I started my own flock, and right now I have about probably 40 or 50 chickens. I would have to go down at night when they're roosting to actually get a good count on them. And I also started a flock of Katahdin sheep. And right now I have 19 ewes. So hopefully next spring we'll see how many we end up with. I guess right now it's all beginning anew. The eggs that I get, my husband takes to work with him, and he's got a little refrigerator at his office, and he sells them. We pretty much break even. I do trade people, my husband's services for straw, and when corn prices got high, I did get rid of, I think 15, I got rid of about 15 chickens. I traded some corn and did some other trades for the farm. So that's where we are at right now. And what I would like to do is perhaps get more chickens and start doing a farmer's market. My biggest concern is with the kids. We have 6 kids who keep us very active. And for my husband's business, which I also do all the paperwork for him. We don't hire anybody else to help, so I'm the office manager for him. But I guess my heart would be more towards the farm. And that's where we're at. So I do have some questions. Molting. I was wondering how you guys handle that. If there's anything special that you guys do to control the molt. And I don't know, do I need to put these questions?
Okay, well, as far as molting, we don't do anything at all. We don't change the hours of light they get. They get only natural light. It has never been a problem as far as, in the wintertime, I think we're raising production chickens, which are bred to produce eggs. And if they're young and producing, they will produce all winter long. If it's real cold, they do slow up a little bit, but we've never had them quit laying until they get old. So we don't do anything as far as altering their molt or giving them any different feed or anything like that. We just let them go through a natural molt. They don't ever do it all at once. You might have 1 or 2 here or there, so it's never been really a problem. And they only live 18 months, so they maybe go through that first molt and then that's it. Does that answer your question?
That does. And I don't know, it's just bad luck, but my chickens went through 2 molts.
Sorry about that, guys. So I had to cut Karla. Maybe Matt and I'll bring Karla back on. Go ahead, Karla.
Here. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering if anybody else out there had a problem with the molt, with this exceptionally dry and hot summer. I didn't know if it was just coincidence. I had never had that in the 4 years that I've had chickens now. And we are in northeast Iowa and had a very dry and hot summer. It just seemed very strange, and I had no explanation other than the weather.
I was just going to say, this is the worst drought we've ever had. Our wells are dry and everything. But we still, as far as the chickens, they always have access to fresh food and water, so it didn't really affect them. They have shade. We did make sure we moved some of the buildings so they would have access to shade. And we have trampolines for shade and hawk protection. We moved trailers, big hay wagons out so they could have shade and hawk protection there. Our main problem this whole spring and summer was more like a lot of hawks migrating through, and it seems like we lost a lot of chickens from hawks. But as far as everything else, they always have food and water, so it was never an issue.
Okay. My other question for you guys is about record keeping. I wonder if you have a specific program or software that you use or that you would recommend.
We do. We basically keep our records on an Excel spreadsheet. So, and we don't do the greatest job of keeping records. We get better every year. We kind of add a new component to our record keeping. So the first few years we didn't keep very good control. I mean, we knew what our total costs were, but we didn't necessarily know the categories. We've gotten better with putting that into like the feed and the bedding and being able to use the Excel spreadsheet to sort our entries and to be able to pull up, you know, what our costs were. But we're still, yeah, which one?
The one about the enterprise.
Yeah, so we don't have an enterprise budget to show today. Somebody was asking about the enterprise budget. Those are, I mean, we've looked at some kind of standard things, and we've used that to help us track some of our costs. But we don't have a straight up like here's where every cost is in our dozen of eggs and what's the return to labor. We only are at this point know some of our costs pretty well, and then are kind of guessing on some of the other stuff. But what we do know is that the eggs are a really, really important part of our marketing. So produce is a much higher return to labor than eggs are, but people don't do crazy things to get our produce. They do crazy things to get our eggs, and when they do that, then they will pick up produce too. Yeah, we expect our total sales on eggs this year is going to be probably about $16,000 or $17,000.
And I just want to add that our heirloom tomato sales, what was our total sales on that, Matt, for plants and fruit?
About $18,000.
So just those two things, you know, the eggs, without the eggs, we would have never done $18,000 worth of tomatoes.
Right. I don't know if it's been quiet for a while, so we'll jump back in. We don't consider eggs a loss leader because we are not losing money on the eggs, but they are not as high a return to labor as produce is. So we don't. There's really almost nothing we sell except, I suppose, there's a few produce items that are very small numbers that we don't make very much money on. But otherwise, everything is sold generating a profit. So what kind of stuff do you feed your hens, Karla?
We are past.
Sorry, try again, Karla. Karla, you can go ahead, just turn on your mic and try again. Sorry about that.
And, okay, is this better?
Yep.
Okay. I give them corn. They get out into the pasture every day. They get oyster shells, and then they also get all of the table scraps that a family of 8 generates. Corn is very expensive, and I would love to have a cheaper way to feed them, but I haven't really found it. So luckily, like I said, I've been able to trade some of my husband's services for some chickens. I've also, or for some corn, I'm sorry, and I've also traded some guinea pigs that we hatched from one of our broody hens, and traded for some corn and also for some straw. So wherever I can trade, if we can do a even up, free up trade, I am all for that.
I was just curious because of the, with the issues you had with their molting. I think if you could somehow get a complete diet, it's just straight. Our hens are out on pasture, and in the summer they eat a lot of bugs. We do a lot of rotating. You just see them chasing down. Especially this year, there was just double bumper crops of grasshoppers. But I still think that since we give them that complete diet, that's one of the reasons that we never we get every egg out of them as we can, and that's just my opinion, of course. But complete diet it's expensive, but when you're doing as many birds as we do, we don't supplement corn at all because it's hard to find non-GMO corn, and I don't know.
Yeah, we used to do more oats and corn supplement, but and that was a little cheaper. But at this point, if we're going to supplement, we want to supplement with non-GMO corn, and that's just really hard to find. So we haven't been doing much corn supplement. We do a little bit of oats, and we also
all the compost.
The only table scraps, garden scraps, all that kind of stuff. But we never give poultry back to poultry, so we never give them the eggshells or the eggs, or other poultry scraps like chicken or broth, or if it has poultry in it, it doesn't go back to the chickens. But if it's meat based, beef, pork, anything like that, those scraps would go back to the chickens, and they'll pick at the bones, and then we'll pull the bones out and do something else with them.
And even in the wintertime when there's no insects and stuff for them, if we have extra liver, I'll shave off the liver and give them that, and they love it.
Is there a reason you choose to use wood shavings rather than straw? Is there a benefit to using one over the other?
When you use wood shavings, that really dries everything out, and you get very minimal or no ammonia. And when I've used straw and hay as bedding, it seems like it gets to be so full of ammonia so quickly.
When we use hay, is outside the building, and that can stack up over the wintertime, and then come spring, we can just move it with the tractor. And outside, if it starts to compost and heat up, that's not a problem at all, and the ammonia dissipates much more easily than inside the building.
And with wood chips, especially for the nest boxes, it keeps the eggs, the eggs are usually 100% clean, pretty much. Unless it's raining out, then the hens are bringing muddy feed into the nest boxes.
How do you compete with, like, the 99 cents a dozen Quick Start eggs? How did you get your customer base?
We have a lot of our customers who ask, maybe the first time, well, what's different between this egg and the 88-cent Hy-Vee special, and I just basically tell them it's a completely different product. Number one, it is a completely different product. I don't even recognize an egg scrambled from a factory farm, per se. And our customers are the same way. Once they've had our eggs once, they're hooked. Plus, a lot of people nowadays, it may only be, say if we have 20,000 people at the downtown farmers market, there might be a very small percentage that really gives a hoot if that chicken ever had a day or night cycle, or had fresh air, or was ever out in the sunshine. But there's enough people that do, that have come out to our farm and see it, and it's just, I don't know. It's a completely different product, is all I'll say. It would be like, I can't even think of anything else. Matt, anything you want to add?
Yeah, we try to price our eggs against our costs, and what we think the market can bear, and not compare it to what's in the grocery store. We get people all the time saying they cannot get anything even close to it. They can go to Whole Foods and they can buy organic. They just can't get eggs that are like ours. So we feel really good about that, and we don't necessarily try to price our eggs compared to something that's not a similar product.
How many people did you say goes through the farmers market every week?
Oh, 20 or 30,000.
Yeah, at the downtown farmers market in Des Moines, it's about 20 to 30,000 on any given Saturday, and that's been very helpful. That's where we've developed many of our customers. But one of the reasons we're going to the Plymouth Church now on a weekly basis, and we're going to do that year round, is that the market has gotten to a point where some of our regular customers no longer go to the market on a regular basis. So the market's been very helpful, but eggs are one of those things where people will tell each other, and a lot of our customers, maybe even a third of our customers, are coming to us because one of our previous customers has recommended that they get our eggs. So that's, at this point in the game, those customers referring to new customers to us is probably even more significant than the farmers market.
And I just want to add one thing. There's markets in Iowa City, I've been told by several people, that eggs are like $5 and $5.50 a dozen. So.
Let's see, I had another question on the tip of my tongue and I totally lost it with the $5 a dozen. I guess with our local farmers market, we're lucky if there's a dozen or 2 dozen people that show up. So I am extremely jealous that you have access to so many people. That is just awesome. I see somebody asked about worming. I have never wormed my chicken. I have read that cider vinegar works well. Have you tried anything?
Yeah, I'm sure by the time they're 18 months, they've had probably a run-in with roundworm. Because I've seen it in some of their stools. But we don't use any chemicals on our farm. All we can do is try to rotate pastures, and every time we get a new group, maybe start out with the new pasture type deal. And usually it doesn't affect the quality of the egg. It might make the hen, it wears the hen down a little bit. Does that answer that question?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say something else about feed cost. Like, for example, when we buy it, if we buy it in bulk from our local co-op, we get a bulk feed discount. And then since we pay cash, we get another 2% discount. And this last time I bought feed, it was about a $75 discount. So it really does add up, And I think the hens, you get your full potential out of the hens laying eggs.
Do you have any problem with rodents keeping that much feed around?
Yeah, and that's where we keep it in a grain bin. And we do have barn cats, but we still have to use poison in the grain bin.
Have you ever had a problem with chickens that find those dead mice breath?
No.
No, our feed, the building, which is an old 1950s grain bin that you can walk into, and it's all steel and it's a round grain bin. That's where we keep our feed. So the chickens aren't anywhere close to that. We have had chickens. We'll find birds and mice and snakes, and they will scavenge, but they don't have access to the feed area.
And I would never just use poison as far as year round, only if I see the rats or mice active.
When we had 4 pallets of feed in there, by the time we got to the end, we had some torn sacks, and we there
was probably some waste.
There was some waste, but probably only about a sack, maybe 2 sacks of waste. So it certainly was to our benefit to be able to buy before the run-up in price, anticipating the run-up in price. That helped. That was probably a couple $100 move to be able to do that.
With your garden, is there a limit of how close you can keep your chickens? And if you put your old wood shavings on your garden, do you have to keep it keep your non-edible for a while, or how do you go on this?
Okay, well, all the chicken manure and wood chips and everything, that's going to be composted. So by the time it goes on the garden, it's just like potting soil.
Okay.
And then we do run the chickens on the garden at times. Like right now, we've got chickens out where the tomatoes were
And peppers.
and peppers. But we usually like to try to keep about 6 months between when chickens are on the garden and when that crop would be eaten. So.
And plus, by the time, we'll get the chickens off the garden, say, in March. It's going to be tilled. We're going to be adding fresh compost. It's going to be rototilled. And so there's no chance that there's going to be like a big glob of chicken manure touching a tomato, for example, or a turnip or something like that. And that kind of reminds me about your question about going, does it make sense to be certified organic? For us, it would not make sense because that would be an added cost, added record keeping, but there would be no benefit for us because we sell every single thing we can produce on our farm, pretty much. But if we were certified organic, they would have more rules as far as, chickens on the garden, period. So, does that answer your question? Like, I think it's very beneficial to have the chickens run on the garden in the late fall and winter. They dig through and they eat a lot of the grubs and bugs, etc., things like that. And just tilling up the soil with their maneuvers.
And we also will have that fence around the garden and rotate the chickens around the garden. That building on wheels is going to be helpful to be able to be all sides of the garden, and get them out of that permanent building, which at this point, after 6 years, has had probably quite a bit of buildup. So getting them away from there, but keeping them going around the garden. They eat a lot of grasshoppers. They're very beneficial to the ecological balance of the garden. If you let them in the garden, they'll destroy everything. That's another thing about chickens. As you're scaling up, chickens are very hard on the landscape. So managing them well is important, both for the health of the chickens, but also for the health of the landscape that you're managing them on.
I think that you've answered most of the questions that I had, and I see here that someone said there's a bad echo on my mic. So maybe now would be a good time just to answer the questions that people are putting up. And if I have any more questions, I can go ahead and type them in as well. Is there a problem with the mic?
Right now, Karla, are you rotating your flocks? Like, say you run your sheep on the pasture, then you wait a day or two, then run your chickens on the pasture, or are the chickens just confined to the barnyard type deal?
I open the door and they go wherever they want.
Okay.
And we did that the first year, but once we started gardening more aggressively, then we started putting the chickens, containing them.
We were actually losing a lot of our chickens to the neighbors' dogs. So that's when we realized we had to put a fence up.
Yeah, and the electric fence is not only good for keeping the chickens in, but if you can keep it electrified, it's very good for keeping other things out.
Fox, coyote, dogs. The dogs have been the worst problem.
Yeah, I lost half of my first flock to my neighbor's dog.
And if you were going to be like, we don't do this as a hobby farm. I don't love my chickens per se. This is work, so I have to be serious. I would love just to turn the chickens loose. Sometimes I feel like, after noon or 1 o'clock they've laid all their eggs. I'll just take the fence down and let them free. But it just doesn't make sense because then you start losing more. You're just training the wildlife to come in and take your chickens, pretty much. That's for us. And we have a nice big dog that does a really good job of keeping, the fox and coyotes at bay and raccoons, but, they can be very sly, as you probably know.
I also have a couple of guineas that work quite well as guard birds. Have you ever tried them?
When I want to become a hobby farm, I'm definitely going to get guineas, and I'm going to get peacocks and peafowl. I love emus. I'm going to get them all. But right now, if it doesn't bring money, I can't waste my time on it. And that's unfortunate, because I love a lot of other stuff.
I understand.
By the way, Karla, you have a gorgeous, gorgeous farm.
Well, thank you. The buildings were empty for many years, so my husband is quite handy. I call him my facilities manager. When I have a project to be done, he's usually right there.
And another benefit you already have, you have 6 employees in the waiting.
Yeah, tell them that. They do like the chicken though, and lambing season. They like that. Daily chores, not so much.
What is the largest city you have near you? I mean, say within an hour. Do you have any big cities? Iowa City?
Iowa City is 2.5 hours away. We are in Clayton County, which is in northeast Iowa, and we have no stoplights in the entire county. Decorah has a nice market, but right now I don't produce enough to make it profitable to drive there. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Because I have a bad echo. So right now, I don't participate in any farmers markets. I would love to in the future. But to do that and make money, I have to definitely go bigger.
I was just going to elaborate a little bit on your, I'm reading some of your questions. How do you compete with like Quick Star's 99 cents a dozen eggs? I know we've talked about it, but if you have the conversation with your customers, the difference between your chickens and the dozen eggs that comes from Rosefield Farm or wherever that have, millions of chickens, most people get it pretty quickly as far as, the day and night doing what a chicken is meant to do as far as, scratching in the dirt and running around, catching things, all that. It makes a difference to quite a few people. A lot of it is just educating the people on what, maybe just the difference between a factory farm and your farm, for example. Not necessarily condemning a factory farm, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mother Earth News had a really good nutrition. That's just a small thing that I would photocopy and put in with the egg. And customers seem to like that.
No.
I mean, I do know, I come from a large family. A lot of my siblings, they don't care if their egg never saw daylight, or whatever, the hen never saw daylight or ever breathed fresh air. It just doesn't matter to some people. But once people are educated, at least they know when they're buying those 88-cent dozen eggs, or sometimes they're 69 cents a dozen, you get what you pay for, and you're going to pay for it in health care in the long run, or something like that. It's almost you have to get political or something. I don't know.
Well, I know Joel Callison said that you should have a dozen store eggs, and at the farmer's market, crack them open side by side, just to see the difference in color and the beautifulness of your fresh farm eggs.
My audio okay. When we first got into chickens, when we were getting the 18-month-old hens from the other farm, they had beautiful yolks, but the quality of the egg had really deteriorated and was more watery. And we didn't really realize that until we started raising our own, and that pullet egg, how rich that is. And then they're good for a year, and after that year they start to lose their quality. Some of them are still fine, but we find that the bad eggs, which is what we eat,
Like the wrinkled ones.
The wrinkled ones from scarred uteruses, or the thin shells, cracks, those kinds of things. That's what we eat, and we see more of those as the hens get older, and we see the problems increase.
Now, I do want to mention, too, I've had friends who have had these Gold Star hens, and she got 2 of them when she was a little girl, and they lived to be 18 and 19 years old, and the reason they died was because raccoons got them. So who knows? They can live a long time, but you know, they quit laying, or they maybe just start laying a couple eggs a year even.
There's really two different two kinds of chickens. I mean, there's probably a whole continuum, but you have the commercial layers like what we use that are bred to lay all their eggs until they're gone, and then you have the older breeds that lay their eggs seasonally and will lay them for many more years. But a chicken only has so many eggs, and once they're gone, they're gone. So depending on what variety you're getting, and you know what your use is, and you know, do you want a chicken that's going to be productive for a long span of its life, but go through parts of the season where it's not laying many eggs at all? If you're not being commercial about it, that may be the right chicken for you. But if you're trying to raise eggs commercially, I would recommend the first breed, you know, which is they're going to lay all their eggs as fast, you know, almost on a daily basis until they're done.
And we did have, when we were in Des Moines, we had 5 hens at our Des Moines house, and we were down to 2, and one of them hatched out some eggs. So we were down to 1 hen laying eggs, and she laid eggs like 30-some days straight in a row. We called her the machine. So, I mean, and they were Bowman Browns, I think, that year.
Yeah, that was Bowman Browns.
So it just depends on the breed you get as far as that. But I have other friends that, you know, do it looks similar to what you do. They let their hens out every day. They could probably never kill them because they're kind of pets, you know. They know each one. There's the Rhode Island Reds, and they have some Bantees and all the different varieties. And he does have a good market for his eggs, but he just doesn't have the eggs. He always is running out of eggs. And he always comes to us when we do our chicken butchering party and rescues like 30 to 40 of our hens and takes them in and, you know, gives them a life probably for the rest of their life. Who knows how long.
And Melissa's saying that you can do the heirloom breeds. You can do those heritage breed chickens commercially, but you have to charge differently. You know, you have to factor in that your handling costs are much higher because they're laying lots fewer eggs over that month or week or whatever your time frame is. So you can do that, but back to the enterprise budget and understanding your costs, you're going to have to charge more for that. And if there's a demand for them, then you can leverage that price.
I've tried the American one because people like to have a green egg in their carton, but I had to get rid of them because they are such horrible layers. I don't like feeding them if they aren't stealing these green eggs on a regular basis.
Now at our farm crawl this year, I talked to a lot of people that were from very small communities like yourself, and they were selling eggs for like $1, $1.25 a dozen, and they don't think they could get more than that. And it's probably, maybe it's true in that community, I don't know, but that's why if you had if it was worth it to go, like once you start having lamb and stuff for sale, it might be worth it to go to a larger market, farmer's market.
Have you ever thought about starting your own chick, getting roosters and an incubator and hatching your own? You're probably too big for that.
We've certainly thought about it. I've been on farms where they've got hens that have raised chickens. It's a really fun thing to watch and to see. But from a commercial standpoint,
the other chickens are on the baby.
It's very difficult to do. Half your chickens are going to be roosters, so then you either have to figure out what you're going to do with the roosters. This is where you start to end up with.
Plus, every hen has to have pretty much almost its own little pen because the other chickens will eat the babies.
Yeah, so that level of segregation to scale up to be raising, you know, we're basically doing every year. At least every year we're doing 150 new chickens, sometimes a little more than that. That's going to be very difficult to try to do something like that. The cost on that is going to be really, really high.
It'd be fun.
But I think it's fun to do. Certainly there'd be a fun way to do some of that, but at a commercial scale, that's going to be really difficult. We also did. We get straight runs, so they're all supposed to be
They're
hens,
not straight rows.
or
We order pullets.
pullets. So they're all supposed to be the hens, and once in a while we'll have some roosters in there. We've kept roosters with our hens. They tend to beat them up pretty bad.
And the health. They're dangerous to the old ladies that have.
Yeah, and then they get pretty aggressive. So, I mean,
We're agro-tourism is part of it.
yeah, we have people come out all the time on the farm. We don't charge that for that, but we have a lot of people interacting with us on the farm. So the roosters didn't do so well for that. The group that we got, not this recent one, but the one we had last spring,
They're like 11 or 12 roosters.
I guess we got them last October, but then we had like a dozen roosters. We just kept them until they were about 4 months old and butchered them, and they were just the most wonderful
About
tasting.
5-6 pounds each.
So we've thought about doing more of those, and then tying that into the sustainability of our farm and the story of our farm, which is that instead of those little baby chicks being thrown into the feed mill, that we're actually taking them to our farm and giving them a 4-month life, and then butchering them as really wonderful meat birds. We haven't gone down that road, but we've talked about it.
When your chickens first start to lay and the eggs are small, do you have special pricing?
What was it?
I'm sorry, we didn't catch that.
Sorry, Matt and Patrick, can you turn off your mic? Thank you, and I'll add Karla back into the mix. Sorry about this, folks. We did not have this problem in the test, so I will figure out what happened and let you know next week. All right, Karla, turn on your mic and you can talk.
Okay. My question is, when your pullets first start to lay and the eggs are smaller, do you do special pricing on that, or how do you deal with the disparity in the size of the eggs?
Yeah, we usually do I think we sold them for $1.75, $2 a dozen, and they're pullet eggs. So the really tiny ones we would probably keep for ourselves. But once they were like half size, then they would end up going. We could sell them all. People love pullet eggs. And there was one time in the winter we started getting pullet eggs in February. It was great that we could take a lot of pullet eggs to the like the Catholic worker houses and things like that. But once the market starts, people will just buy those eggs up. And then we start out $2 a dozen. Then once they start getting bigger, then they're $2.50. Then we just start putting 3 or 4 in with each regular dozen. Then it's done. They're just regular eggs. Hey, turn your mic on.
I think that you've answered most of my questions that I had, so I don't know if this is the time that we go and let everybody else ask their questions to you, or how Luke wants to deal with this now.
Yeah, if you want to defer to the audience, we can take questions from the audience for the rest of the time, and you can chime in the chat box, Karla, since we've been having problems with your mic. I'll ask one question for you, Matt and Patrick. You say you don't. Do you not use enterprise budgets, or do you just kind of have it figured out after doing it for so many years? You don't feel like you need to have a real detailed account of your egg layer enterprise.
We, in a perfect world, we would have a lot better record keeping. We're getting better every year. We keep adding. The first year we were at the market, we kept track of our sales every week. Then we started keeping track of eggs versus produce. Then we added meat. Now, at this point, we break down we have eggs, we have beef, and then we have all of our produce. So we're keeping track on a weekly basis of how many dollars worth of potatoes, how many dollars worth of plants. Plants were easy because they're taxed, so we always kept track of that. But now, we just keep adding to our spreadsheet every year. So we keep very detailed records on our income side, and we're catching up on the expense side. And we found that instead of using like QuickBooks or some kind of software, that really just a spreadsheet in Excel has been working pretty well for us. There's a great value to enterprise budgets, and if you've got the time to be able to put that all in, that's great. We've been scaling up every year, and we're kind of scrambling. We've learned a lot of lessons. One of the benefits of not being able to be limited by resources at the beginning is we would have made a lot of really stupid mistakes if we had had unlimited resources. So that limitation was actually kind of a benefit to us.
To talk about this one.
The question about plants are easy. I'm sorry, plants were easy to keep track of because we had to keep track of what we sold for plants, because in Iowa the plants themselves are taxed where other food has no sales tax on it. But plants do have sales tax. Unless you're selling to another commercial grower, then you don't have to
or
tax
if it's an
it.
edible plant.
But yeah, or if it's an edible plant that you're planning to actually eat, not. But if it's just a tomato plant, that's taxed.
We never talked about this either.
So Pat, talk a little bit about how much time you spend a day managing the flock and doing the chicken business.
So like in the winter, when I'm pushing snow and hauling water, and they're inside more, so you have to do extra cleaning and stuff like that. I might be doing 2.5, 3 hours a day, not counting like cleaning eggs and stuff. That's just dealing with the chickens. In the summer, it's easily an hour to an hour and a half a day, I guess, with our 2 flocks, sometimes 3.
And then you're spending quite a bit of time now tending the chicks.
Yeah, like right now we have 170. They're 10-week-old pullets, and I'm moving their fence around, and they're just a little different than, they don't really know to go in at night per se. So I have to kind of walk through their little pasture, and they'll be hiding in clumps of grass to get them to go in, and it just takes time. And another part of the thing people have to realize when you have this many hens, if I don't get home to shut the door, I always have to be home at dawn and dusk, because if you have to shut the doors and let the chickens out. That hampers us, like during the summer markets when we leave at 5 o'clock and it's still dark. We're taking a risk every time we open the doors. There could be raccoons or owls or any of that. I've seen all those predators, and they will take chickens. There was a chicken yesterday I found that was torn in like three places. I'm assuming it was a hawk, but I'll never know.
Yeah, the whole our life is we didn't mention this, but this is really important. Our schedule is really about the chickens. Because they're such an important part of the farm, they're a significant part of our income, there is not any room for mistakes. And so very rarely will we have somebody else manage the opening of the door and the closing of the door at night. So our lifestyle is really on the clock with the chickens. So we can sleep in a little later this time of year, but in the summertime, somebody's up, and we can go out to eat this time of year. If we go out afterwards, or in the middle of the summer, we can go out to eat and be home by dark. Our clock is very much run by the chickens.
And even say if we were a half hour late, say it's dark at 8 o'clock and we don't get home till 8:30, you risk, what if you go and shut the doors? Because I don't take a flashlight and look. There could be a raccoon I shut in with the chickens, or we had one friend that shut a bobcat, I think, in with their chickens, killed every single one of them. So people kind of laugh about, I got to get home and shut the chickens. Oh my God, it's getting dark, but it doesn't matter. It's just you got to do it.
Yeah, and I know that somebody said about automatic chicken doors. I know that there are those kinds of things.
For example, I have one hen that got picked on, so she was separated for a while. Well, now she waits by the fence where I climb over the fence to go shut the doors every night. I got to pick her up and go put her in because she still wants to go to her little special pink crate. So, you would think I have 150 chickens. How can I even know this one chicken? But she's still there waiting for me every night because when I started introducing her back to the flock, she would live with the flock during the day, and then at night I'd lift her over the fence and she'd run back to her pink crate. But then she was fully healed, so then now she lives with the rest of the flock full time. And that's been about a year, and she still to this day waits for me right by that gate. Okay. It's hard work. I have a silly story. Should I start? Any other questions?
Yeah, what lessons from zookeeper?
As far as the zookeeping question, at the zoo, everything was kept very clean and sterile and disinfected every day. That would be great to do, but I haven't disinfected my chicken. I think I disinfect all the pans between groups. Other than that, they are scrubbed and cleaned, but they're not disinfected. Just animal management is good. Sometimes Matt and I work against each other because, he's a farmer and I'm more of I would call myself a professional animal care person, whereas a farmer might, if a cow doesn't have a calf that year, she's gone, she's out of there. Well, I feel a little differently about stuff like that, so maybe I'm a little more compassionate farmer than I would have been.
I would say the other thing that's really helpful for Pat is that he's, and he said this in the past, as a zookeeper, he was a trained observer. So he comes into farming not having a farming background, but having some of those skills. So he's really skilled at being able to identify, just look and kind of read what's going on, and pick out the problem and address issues. In a lot of ways, he's even far better at that than I am. So those are really helpful skills. Winter mites and lice.
As far as the lice and mites and things, they're out every day. We try to keep the inside of the building clean. And once again, I'm sure they have mites and lice by the time they're killed, but we replace all the perching and we pretty much just bleach down the building. And our building, the two new buildings, actually the third one, all the buildings you can take a hose into once they're empty and just hose them all down because it's like decking floor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just that we're able to, we kind of do deep bedding while they're in there. We'll clean them out maybe a couple times, but we just keep adding wood chips. But then in between flocks, we clean everything out, hose it down, wipe it down.
Now I have done, I've purchased a sack of diatomaceous earth because that's supposed to kill lice and mites, and it's it's a non-chemical. And I'll give that to them, and I'll dump it where they take their dust baths. So that may help or it may not, but it's what I've heard to do. That's natural.
Yeah, Pat, just tell them about you're really fanatical about water, and just talk about that. I think that makes a big difference, but maybe we do need to come up with a more efficient way, but it's a very effective way.
We have just Vortex black rubber tubs for the adult hens. And in the summer, I'll use metal pans because it keeps the water cooler. Each one holds about 3 gallons, and there's like 5 spread out. And that's, I scrub them and fill them every day. That's about it. It's on water. In the winter time, it's kind of funny because I always say I go to collect eggs. I take hot water in, and I top off all the pans with hot water, and then I take the eggs out in a nice warm bucket. So it all works out just fine. I usually do about 3 egg runs a day. And I bring fresh water. Once they've had water in the morning, then every time I do an egg run, I will just bring a bucket of hot water in and top off the waters. But we've been kind of lucky and unfortunate, depending on how you look at it, because these winters have been so mild lately that it's really not a problem. The sun keeps the water open all day. I can't read this.
That's it.
I always keep thinking, one of the problems I hate, I'm just thinking now with the feed and water, is in the winter we get huge flocks of starlings, like maybe 600 to 1,000 that just converge and just eat crap and drink, everything's polluted. And so I've like shot at them with shotguns, and I know if I had like a nipple water system, that wouldn't happen. But then they'd have to be in a heated building, because that stuff can't freeze.
Yeah, that's part of our whole system is figuring out. So our biggest demand is in the summertime. So our demand goes down a little bit, although not enough to have extra eggs. So we don't do any inputs with lighting or heating in the wintertime, and we do go down a little bit in egg production. But we feel like that the difference in what it would cost to put the buildings to be frost-free, that those costs, we couldn't recoup the costs with just improving the group that we have. Now, if we scaled up, maybe, but we don't want to scale up necessarily above 300 hens.
And I would like to add that when you have 150 hens inside a building that's 10 by 20 feet, and you open the door and go in there, it is very warm in there. I mean, it's very warm. The birds keep it warm. I mean, I have waters, when it's really, really cold outside, I keep water inside the building, so they don't have to go out and drink if they want, and rarely will it freeze.
Yeah, and another strategy is that we basically line the whole building, at least the west and the north sides, but some of the buildings, all but the south side, with straw bales all the way to the roof. Those straw bales then are used in the garden, so it doesn't matter that they've started to decompose, because in the springtime we're going to use them for mulch. But that helps as well. So we really winterize the buildings in the wintertime, and we open them up and get them really breathable.
There's lots of windows
and stuff in the summertime. And we haven't tried raw apple cider vinegar in the water. We haven't really tried anything in the water other than just having really fresh water all day long. Because Pat'll refresh water in the summer multiple times during the day. He's doing that in the winter multiple times.
Hoses out there anyway, so.
Yeah, no, Ryan's just saying.
Ryan Marquette?
Ryan Marquette, yeah.
What's he saying?
Well, yeah, no.
I can't read it. It's too far.
I don't know, Karla, if you had anything else to jump in with, or Luke, if there's anything that we haven't covered.
Yeah. I wanted just to. We probably have time for one more question, and while you're thinking about that question and putting it in the chat box, I wanted to switch over to our sponsor acknowledgement view here and just say that we couldn't make this possible without generous donations to this program by a federal funder, the Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, which is part of the Farm Bill. So we don't have a Farm Bill right now. If we had a Farm Bill, we might be able to apply for a new round of funding to do these again. So be sure to let your Congress people know that you benefit from the Farm Bill, and would love to see that passed with the same funding as 2008. And also additional thank you, as you can see on the screen here on the right here, to John Deere, Cliff Bar, Cedar Tree Foundation, Ag Ranchers Alliance, Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, and the Specialty Crop Block Program, and the USDA Risk Management Agency. Thank you very much to our speakers for organizing some great discussion tonight, and I will hope to see you next week for a new Farminar with an interesting perspective on equipment. What equipment does a beginning farmer need for row crop livestock farming? Jeff Olson from Southeast Iowa is partnering up with Brian Boggy from Northeast Iowa. Thanks again, and hope you all have a great night.